Your job description was simple enough. Calibrate conduits, replace fusion coils, maybe fix a food synthesizer on a good day. It definitely did not mention cosmic anomalies. But here you were, staring at a blinking red light on your console. It wasn't a fire alarm. It wasn't a hull breach. It was something far stranger, an unscheduled energy reading. It came from Section Gamma, the one part of the starship everyone avoided. Your supervisor's voice crackled over the comms. Technician, we have a sensor ghost in Gamma. Grohl was a Cathar, all four arms crossed impatiently. Go wave a scanner at it. Make it go away. He made it sound like you were shooing a stray cat, not approaching the ship's primary power source, a contained storm of raw particles. You sighed and picked up your toolkit. The walk there was long and silent. The ship's corridors grew dimmer. The cheerful hum of the life support faded. It was replaced by a deeper, resonant thrum. You reached the final bulkhead. A heavy blast door stood before you. It was labeled in 5 different languages. All of them meant the same thing. Certain death this way. You swiped your keycard. The door hissed open with a reluctant groan. The chamber beyond was vast and dark. In the center was the containment field, a sphere of shimmering, golden energy. Inside it, a universe was being born and dying. Every single second, a swirling vortex of impossible colors. This was the heart of the ship, the storm of particles that powered everything. The readings on your handheld scanner were chaos. Energy levels spiked and dropped wildly. Nothing about this was a simple sensor ghost. You stepped closer to the containment sphere. The air grew warm and tasted of ozone. A low hum vibrated through the deck plates. It felt less like a machine and more like a slow, deep breath. You tapped a command into your console. A diagnostic request, just a simple query. But the storm seemed to notice. The colors inside the field brightened. The low hum began to rise in pitch. A shiver ran down your spine that had nothing to do with the cold. A strange feeling bloomed in your chest, a sense of being watched. You were supposed to be the observer here, not the other way around. The hum inside the containment bay became a scream. It was a high, tearing sound of stressed metal and tortured energy. A hairline crack of pure white light appeared. It raced across the surface of a field emitter. You stumbled backward. Alarms blared to life across the chamber. But they sounded distant and small, drowned out by the shriek of the failing field. The crack widened. It split into a dozen more, a web of light spreading across the containment sphere. You knew you should run. Your every instinct screamed at you to flee. But you were frozen, mesmerized by the beautiful, terrifying display. Then, the field shattered. A wave of shimmering particles erupted outward. It was not an explosion of force. It was a release of pure presence, a silent tidal wave of light and color. It rushed toward you. There was no time to even raise your arms. You closed your eyes and braced for oblivion. You expected searing heat. You expected unimaginable pain, the feeling of your atoms being torn apart. But there was none of that. Instead, you felt a touch. It was gentle. It was cool, like a soft breeze on a summer night. The storm of particles washed over you. It flowed around you. You opened your eyes. You were standing in the heart of the storm. Swirling motes of purple and gold danced around your hands. A nebula of soft green light coiled around your legs. There was no pain. There was no danger. There was only a strange, silent welcome. A feeling washed over you, not from your own mind. It was a whisper that used no words, a sense of profound curiosity, and an even more profound loneliness. It felt like the storm was looking at you, And inside your head, a single, impossible thought bloomed. Hello? The security team kicked the door open. They were a wall of heavy radiation suits and drawn pulse rifles. 2 Cathar and a Xylan officer. Their insectoid eyes were wide behind their visors. They stopped dead at the threshold. They stared at the impossible scene. You, a simple human technician, standing unharmed in a storm of raw star matter. The energy that should have vaporized you was playing. It swirled around you in gentle, curious patterns. The Xylan officer shouted something. His voice was a tinny buzz through your comms. You couldn't make out the words, not over the soft, humming song of the storm. You took a step toward them. Just one simple step. But they reacted as if you had pulled a weapon. They raised their rifles. The fear in their posture was unmistakable. You raised your hands slowly, a universal sign of peace. But the storm mimicked you. 2 massive tendrils of light rose on either side of you. It probably wasn't the helpful gesture you intended. They didn't see a surrendered crewmate. They saw a monster framed by cosmic horrors. 2 guards rushed forward. They grabbed your arms and dragged you out of the bay. The moment you crossed the threshold, the storm roared. A wave of angry crimson light pulsed behind you. But it did not cross the doorway. They threw you into a quarantine cell. The walls were sterile white. The air smelled of antiseptic. A shimmering blue force field sealed the entrance. On the other side, the alien crew gathered. Grohl, your 4-armed supervisor, was there. Captain Vorlag watched from a main view screen. His crystalline form was rigid and cold. You saw their faces. The reptilian Jor, the insectoid Xylan. They were twisted in masks of fear and suspicion. You tried to speak, to explain what you felt. But they couldn't hear you. They didn't want to. In their eyes, you were no longer a person. You were a contamination, a walking bomb, a human who had touched the forbidden fire, and somehow, impossibly, had not been burned. The silence in your cell was a heavy blanket. Your own breathing sounded loud in the small space. They had left you here for hours, alone with your thoughts, and with something else. A faint, warm echo in the back of your mind. It was the memory of the storm's touch, a feeling of connection that still lingered. You sat on the simple metal bench. You closed your eyes. You shut out the white walls and the hum of the force field. You focused on that lingering warmth. You reached for it, not with your hands, but with your will. You sent out a thought, a question without words. What are you? You didn't expect an answer. It was a foolish, desperate act. But an answer came. It wasn't in a language you knew. It was a flood of pure information. Images and feelings poured into your mind. You saw the birth of a star in a cloud of dust. You felt the slow, patient turn of a galaxy. You witnessed novas and black holes, a timeline of millions of years unfolded in a single second. It was a being of immense age and power, a mind born not of flesh and blood, but of energy and light. The storm was not just a storm. It was a consciousness. Another feeling washed over you, a deep, aching loneliness. It had been trapped in that field for so long, a silent prisoner, a power source for beings it could not understand. It had never known contact, never known conversation, until you. You sent another thought. You are not alone anymore. The reply was a wave of something like gratitude, a soft pulse of turquoise light that only you could see. It illuminated the inside of your mind. In that moment, you understood. You had not been attacked by the storm. You had been greeted by a lonely god. Suddenly, the entire ship lurched. A violent shudder ran through the deck plates. A klaxon began to blare. Not the warning alarm from the containment bay. This was a red alert. Red lights bathed your sterile cell in a bloody glow. An amplified voice echoed through the ship. It was Captain Forlag. His tone was cold and steady, but laced with urgency. All hands to battle stations. We are under attack. This is not a drill. The ship shook again, a deep, grinding sound of metal being torn. You scrambled to the small viewport in your cell door. Outside, the corridor was chaos. Crew members ran past, clad in emergency gear. Through the viewport, you could see a sliver of space. It was no longer empty. It was filled with ships. Sleek, black vessels shaped like knives. They moved with a predator's grace. Green bolts of energy lashed out from them. They struck your ship's shields. The shields flared, a brilliant blue bubble, but they flickered and dimmed with each impact. An explosion rocked the hull nearby. The lights in your cell flickered and died. They were replaced by the dim red of emergency power. This was not a random pirate raid. This was a coordinated professional assault. The attackers were silent. They were efficient. They were winning. The Stellaron was dying around you. The force field at your door sizzled and vanished. You stumbled back in surprise. Standing in the doorway was Captain Vorlag. His crystalline body was covered in tiny stress fractures, a sign of extreme pressure. Two heavily armed guards flanked him, but their weapons were not aimed at you. They were aimed down the corridor. "Technician." The captain's voice was low and resonant. "The crew fears what you have become." He did not move from the doorway. Another impact shook the ship. The emergency lights flickered violently. "They say the particle storm has infected you." You opened your mouth to deny it. But what could you say? That you were talking to it? That it was your friend? He wouldn't believe you. "Our shields are at 9%, the captain continued. His gaze was sharp. It felt like he was looking right through you. "Primary weapons are offline. We are defenseless." He took a single deliberate step into your cell. The guards remained outside. "The entity in the containment bay, you have a connection to it." It was not a question. He knew. The ship's sensors registered a massive synaptic transfer between you and the storm. He was now standing directly in front of you. "I have a choice. I can let my ship and my crew die, or I can trust the monster they fear." His offer hung in the air between you. It was an act of absolute desperation, a gamble that no sane captain would ever make. "The storm listens to you. I have seen it." He gestured back toward the corridor. "Save this vessel. Save my crew." The unspoken part of the bargain was clear. Save them all, and maybe, just maybe, they would stop seeing you as a threat. He was asking you to unleash the storm, to unleash yourself. The two guards led you through the damaged ship. They moved with a purpose you had never seen. They still kept their distance. But now, their fear was mixed with a sliver of hope. They were not just escorting a prisoner. They were escorting a weapon. Red lights flashed over scenes of chaos. Sparks rained down from ceiling conduits. Wounded crew members were being helped toward the med bay. The ship groaned around you. It was the sound of a dying beast. You finally reached the blast door to Section Gamma. It was bent and twisted from a nearby explosion. One of the guards had to force it open. The containment bay was a disaster. The emitters were shattered. The control consoles were sparking ruins. And the storm was free. It no longer churned with violent rage. It filled the chamber with a soft, pulsing light. A quiet, waiting energy. It seemed to be waiting for you. The guards stopped at the doorway. Their orders were to bring you here, not to follow you in. This was your path to walk alone. You took a deep breath. The air still tasted of ozone, but now it felt familiar, comforting. You stepped across the threshold. You walked into the storm's heart. The particles greeted you like a joyful pet. They swirled around your feet. They danced up your arms. They filled the air with a gentle, chiming sound. This was not chaos. This was pure potential, pure life. You felt its mind brush against yours. A question, a feeling of concern for the ship, for you. You reached out with your own thoughts, not with a command, but with a request, a plea. Be still, you thought. I need you to be calm. And in an instant, the raging tempest of a newborn star fell silent. The light softened. The colors held their shape. The entire chamber became a cathedral of frozen light. The two guards in the doorway could only stare. Through a large viewport on the far wall, you saw space. You saw the enemy. Another volley of green energy bolts was racing toward the ship, aimed directly at this section. The hull here was already weakened. The attack would tear the ship apart. There was no time to think. There was only time to act. You raised your hands. You faced the viewport. You called to the mind of the storm. Protect us. The word was a silent prayer, a desperate command. The storm answered. The frozen light in the chamber exploded into motion. It surged toward the outer hull. It poured through the buckled plating. It flowed like a river of liquid stars. Outside the ship, the particles coalesced. They did not form a simple barrier. They wove themselves into a vast, shimmering shield. It was a tapestry of impossible colors. Deep blues swirled with vibrant golds. Streaks of silver and crimson danced within it. It looked like a captured dawn. The enemy's energy bolts struck the shield. There was no sound, no explosion. They simply vanished. They splashed against the shield's surface and dissolved into nothing. The impact sent no shudder through the ship. It was like throwing stones into an ocean. The shield held, and the storm within it waited for your next command. You could feel their shock across the void. The enemy pilots in their sleek, black ships. Their confusion was a palpable wave of emotion. They had expected a killing blow. They had hit a wall of pure impossibility. They fired again, a coordinated barrage from 3 ships. They poured power into the attack. The green lances of energy were thicker this time, more potent. They converged on a single point on your new shield. The shield brightened. The colors swirled faster, but it did not break. It did not even bend. It simply absorbed the energy. It fed the storm. You could feel the entity's amusement, its growing strength. But a shield was not enough. The Stellaron was adrift. Its engines were dead. It could not run. You could hold them off for hours, but they would not stop. They would simply keep attacking. You needed to end this. You could feel the storm's eagerness. It was not a passive thing. It had a will, a desire to answer this violence in kind. You focused your mind. You pictured the enemy flagship, the largest of the knife-like vessels. You gathered the storm's power. You shaped it with your thoughts. You formed it into a single, perfect idea: strike. A portion of the shield detached itself. A great river of golden and white light. It flowed away from the ship. It twisted and compressed. It became a spear, a javelin of unimaginable energy. It shone with the brilliance of a supernova. It crossed the distance to the enemy flagship in less than a heartbeat. It did not punch through the hull. It simply passed through the ship, as if it were a ghost. For a moment, nothing happened. The flagship floated there, unharmed, Then, with a silent flash of internal light, it went dark. Every system died. Every light went out. It was a dead thing, a tomb of metal and silence, adrift in the void. The two remaining enemy ships ceased their attack. Their weapon ports closed. They hung in the darkness of space, motionless. You could feel their terror. It was a cold, sharp spike in the emptiness. They had just witnessed something beyond their understanding of warfare, of star science. They had fired upon a ship, and a ghost had answered. A long moment passed. Then, as one, the two ships turned. Their engines flared. They fled. They accelerated to speeds you did not think possible. They vanished into the starfield, leaving their dead flagship behind. The battle was over. It had not even been a fight. You lowered your hands. The brilliant shield outside the ship dissolved. The particles flowed back into the containment bay. The storm settled. It became a gentle, swirling mist of soft light once more. Its mind touched yours. A sense of satisfaction, of a job well done. You turned. The two guards were still in the doorway. Their rifles were lowered. Their faces, visible through their visors, were slack with awe. On a nearby comm screen, Captain Vorlag's face was visible. His crystalline structures seemed to have smoothed. The stress fractures were gone. He was not looking at a monster anymore. He was looking at a miracle. The entire bridge crew stood behind him. Their faces were a mixture of fear and reverence. It was the sound of alien silence, the sound of everything changing forever. They did not take you back to a cell. They escorted you to the bridge. The journey was different this time. The crew members you passed did not recoil in fear. They stepped aside. They watched you with wide, uncertain eyes. You were an enigma, a terror and a savior all at once. When you stepped onto the bridge, a hush fell over the crew. Captain Vorlag inclined his head, a gesture of profound respect. An ancient being in a silver containment suit glided toward you. It was the elder, Wands, a Lycian, a creature of pure thought. His species had seen the rise and fall of empires. "We have witnessed the impossible," the elder's synthesized voice hummed. It was a calm, melodic sound. You did not simply control a storm of particles. His mechanical hand gestured toward you. You spoke with it. You communed with an intelligence. The bridge crew murmured amongst themselves. The elder raised a hand for silence. That energy is not a fuel source. It is a being, a star mind. He explained that these entities were rare, ancient, minds born in the hearts of stars. They were non-physical. They were peaceful. And they were powerful beyond measure. The one you have befriended was captured long ago. The elder's voice was filled with a deep sadness. It was enslaved, used as a simple battery to power this ship. The beautiful storm was not a feature. It was a prisoner. Captain Vorlag turned from his console. The scan data from the disabled enemy ship was displayed there. "Their energy signatures are not consistent with pirates," he said. His voice was heavy. "The alloys of their hull, their weapon cooling systems, we have a match." He turned his crystalline head to face you. "They are the Xylac." The name fell like a stone on the quiet bridge. Even you had heard the stories. The Xylac, a ruthless empire that expanded through consumption. "They are known as mind hunters," Captain Vorlag stated grimly. The elder Wands continued the terrible explanation. "The Xylac's technology is fueled by consciousness." He gestured to the star chart. "They hunt and capture non-physical beings like the star mind." The crew listened in horrified silence. They cage these ancient minds. They drain them. They burn their thoughts as fuel. The black knife-like ships were not just warships. They were slave ships. They were not here to destroy us, the elder concluded. They were here to reclaim their property. His mechanical eyes fixed on you. But now they know the star mind is not alone. Now they know it has a guardian. Now they will come for you. They will return, the elder one said. His voice was low, cutting through the silence of the bridge. A single ship was a probe, a test. He gestured to the vastness of space on the view screen. Next, they will send a fleet. Their full force will come for the star mind. The weight of his words settled on you. This was not over. It had just begun. And they will come for you, human, the being who can speak to their power source. The star mind pulsed in your consciousness, a tremor of fear. It was not for itself. It was for you, for the ship. There was only one way to protect it. The elder explained the terrible choice. The star mind was powerful, but it was diffuse. It had no anchor in the physical world. It needed a focus, a pilot, a will to guide its immense energy. You can merge with it, the elder said softly. Your mind and its mind could become one, a symbiotic union. You would cease to be just human. The star mind would cease to be just energy. You would become something entirely new, a being of flesh and starlight. The bond would be permanent, irreversible, the elder warned. But it would be the only way to truly fight the Xylac, the only way to wield the storm's full power. The star mind whispered in your mind, a question, a feeling of profound trust, a hope that you would not abandon it. It was asking you, asking to share its existence with you. You looked at the faces of the alien crew, their fear, their hope. You felt the warm presence of the star mind in your thoughts. Your choice was already made. You nodded to the elder. I will do it. The process was not what you expected. There was no pain, no machine. It was a simple act of acceptance. You closed your eyes on the bridge of the Stellaron. You opened your mind completely to the storm, and it flowed into you. It was a feeling of awakening, of coming home to a place you had never been. Your senses expanded beyond the confines of your body. You could feel the hum of the ship's engines, the slow spin of a distant moon, the silent light of 1,000 stars. You were no longer Alex, the technician. You were more. And as the merge settled, as your two minds became one perfect synthesis, they arrived. The view screen flickered. The empty space outside was suddenly filled. Dozens of Xylac hunter ships. They blotted out the stars. A fleet of black daggers aimed at the heart of the Stellaron. A voice of static and hatred echoed over the comms. Give us the anomaly, and the human that commands it, or be erased. But you felt no fear. A calm, powerful certainty filled you. You walked to the viewport. The crew stepped back. They could see the change in you. Your eyes no longer held just a human soul. They held the light of a captured star. You placed your hand on the cold glass. Let them come, you thought. And outside the ship, the storm answered your call. It erupted from the containment bay. It surrounded the Stellaron in a glorious, defiant aurora of power and wrath. The battle was not long. In truth, it could not be called a battle. It was a reckoning. The Xylac fleet fired as one. A storm of green energy converged on your ship. But the aurora you had created did not just block it. It consumed it. The enemy's attack only made you stronger. The Xylac commander screamed orders into his comm, but his tactics were useless. He was fighting a hurricane with a child's net. You were no longer just a shield. You had become the tempest itself. With a thought, you detached from the Stellaron. You became a comet of sentient light, a being of pure will and energy. You moved through their fleet like a phantom. You did not destroy their ships. That was not your way. Instead, you performed surgery. A tendril of light would lash out. It would slice through a weapon array. Another would disable an engine block. You moved from ship to ship. You left them powerless, adrift. But you were not finished. Your new senses could feel them, the other minds, caged and screaming in the holds of the Xylax ships. With focused bursts of energy, you tore open their containment cells. You freed the prisoners. Dozens of flickering, grateful consciousnesses flew free. They shimmered into the void like rescued fireflies. The Xylax fleet was left broken, humiliated, a fleet of silent metal corpses in the dark. You returned to the Stellaron. Your physical body stood on the bridge, but your consciousness had touched the void. It had wielded the power of creation. The alien crew stared at you. The fear was gone. The awe remained. But it was now joined by a profound respect. You had not just saved their ship. You had saved them all. You had become something new. A legend whispered in the silent corners of space. A story to be told on 1,000 worlds for 1,000 years. You were the human who had tamed a storm of particles. You were the friend to a lonely star. You were the guardian of the star mind. And your watch had just begun.